Okay. Okay, we ready, you guys? It's past 10 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. Our school board workshop for today, Tuesday, November 15, 2022, is now called to order. We will actually be going over 3 different parts today. The first part will be over several policies that we weren't able to get to, and then we will also be going over student engagement, and then finally the mental health referral system. So we have 3 parts, so board members, just to make sure that we get to all 3 parts, we may have to be, a little brief on some of those comments. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll start with Ms. Davis.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. So I will, we are going to start with a couple policies today. Shouldn't take too long. Most of them are board member proposed. The 2 first policies that you see that are listed for Member Combs are 2 that actually were brought forward from the American Heart Association. They've brought forward policies to this board in the past for consideration. And so these 2 policies we just wanted to highlight for you, make you aware that they've asked the board to consider them for policy. And so Mr. Farkas here and his team have reviewed them thoroughly, and I'd like for him to kind of provide a highlight.
Certainly, and obviously through the ESSER funds, we've had the opportunity to put in bottle refilling stations, touchless bottle refilling stations at all of our schools. And when the American Heart Association first approached us, it was a great opportunity because we've already done a lot of this stuff. There's no additional cost that will come in because it's already been absorbed and done at the school site. In conversations with board members over the last couple of weeks, it's been great to look at and review part of it because it first came to us, there was a lot of specificity around how many feet to each water filling station. We pushed back a little bit on that and talked about policies should be much more about why as opposed to how. In recognizing some of these, there's also a couple things on here that are a little bit more how as well. So we anticipate revising of these a little bit more and making it more about providing access to water, because that's an important part. We want to make sure that's true of all of our students. But we will see a little bit of revision when it comes back for that next round based on how they are, where they're located, things like that. As you know, some of our older buildings, a little bit harder to put, bottle refilling stations in the middle of a hallway. Sometimes it's in classrooms, things like that. But we are very proud to say from a school district standpoint that all of our students do have access to clean, free drinking water, and we think these are easy policies to implement. Like I said, we will implement a little bit different because we want to make sure it's more about that they have access as opposed to how they have access.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. And we'll have the first comment. Member Gray?
Wake up. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Farkas, my question is with regards to the water bottle, and I'm looking at the pages are not quantified, but I'm looking at the second part of this where it says Section 4 application, and if you get to that page, under that it says this policy applies to A and then B. Do you want me to go over there and show you where it is? Because otherwise, yeah. Under applicant. Here. 1 and 2. Right here. You see it?
Yes.
Member Gray, you just want to make sure what clarification on which policy you're talking about. There's a couple of them. Which one are you talking about?
The first one.
The first one, increasing water access in schools? Okay.
And it's under Section 4 applicability B. And then it talks about total cost renovation cost is under there, A and B, where it applies.
So my only question is, when we get into renovations, which is our referendum monies also, what happens when we have Foster Elementary, where some of those water fountains are, they're very old, and we might have already destroyed that one, but we have these older buildings, not unlike Jesuit, for example. That's an old building years ago. We had to remove it and the piping thereof because of some of the particles coming in. So are we taking all those old appliances out and replenishing them or replacing them with the newer?
That's a real good question. So the first part of it is that we put in brand new touchless refillable stations at every school. So they have access now. But as we go through in renovations, we will take out ones where they're old pipes that need to be redone. in that case, as we would in any normal renovation. So we will take that out as it's needed. Until then, we have the new stations that are there. All of them now have filters on them. We've added filters to every single one of those to make sure the water is clean. But as they get replaced, we will replace them with new touchless stations as opposed to some of the older ones that are out there now. So we won't go now and retrofit all of them. It will go as we go through renovation of each one of those projects. Again, they have the access now because they have those fillers at their site. But in elementary schools, as you guys know, there's a water fountain in between each one of those classrooms. That's back on now. So if that needs to be replaced, then as part of a renovation, it would be replaced.
So we're expecting to take those out? and
Yes, ma'am,
replace.
as a normal replacement cycle.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. I had a question about number one. Is there no way we could have condensed this into one policy since there's a lot of repeated parts in the two policies that are similar? Couldn't we have made this one policy? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Member Combs. Yeah, absolutely. We can make them one. I mean, this was brought forward. We wanted to bring forward to you how the American Heart Association asked the board to consider. But certainly when we, take this into account, we can put our own policy in place that is reflective of the board, not.
And if the board decides to
But-
go forward with this, we'll put it in the proper form for the actual
Absolutely.
public hearing.
Okay. And then the next question I have is, there have been concerns repeatedly about the quality of water and making sure that there are no contaminants in it. I noticed that it does say that the stations will be cleaned regularly, but will there be any kind of water testing continuously just to make sure and assure the public that, if we're making sure we have accessible water, that it's also safe and clean?
Yes, there is currently a testing protocol in place where we test all of the potable waters that are there. So yes, that will continue to be in place. That's done. It's sent to an outside lab by our Sites and Utilities Department, and that will continue throughout this, as it has been for the previous 5-6 years.
And if parents had concerns about that, where is that information accessible?
Of how often we test,
Yeah,
and that
just
part
to
of it
make
too.
sure that they see the test results or that they know that the water is safe or anything.
We had a website where we post that. I'll make sure that's updated. That's after dance here, honestly. We used to have a website where we actually updated every one of those results as it came out. I'll make sure it's continued to be.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Perez?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So, what I've heard from the community and also in the schools that I've visited is that the repair of these filling stations is really lacking. The parents and the faculty are really excited about these filling stations, but the repair is what is an issue, especially in the gyms, near the gyms, and near the cafeterias. Can you speak up regarding that?
Certainly. And it goes back to the issue that they're all under warranty, so it doesn't cost us money, but that doesn't help the parent or the teacher or the kid that wants to get the water refilled. So we have talked to our third-party vendor who installed them, and now they have a service where that is all they do, is do the repairs, because we had a backlog of tickets. What you're hearing is absolutely right. They'd installed them, and whether it was student damage or just a malfunction of the system, it was taking them too long to get to them. We have caught up on those tickets, so that is a problem that has been addressed and continues to be addressed. But the number of tickets we have now are low. I think the last time I checked, there was 20 or 30 tickets, which for the district-wide is not a lot. But the concern you heard was a legitimate concern, and the vendor was, because obviously it's under warranty, we don't want to pay to do that. They do that. But there was a little bit of a lag time in addressing that. But that has been addressed. But if you hear of any specifics, as we've told all board members, please let me know and we'll make sure it gets addressed.
Okay, and then also operational issues, like the other board members have mentioned, is things getting clogged up in the system, and then therefore not allowing the fountains to work correctly. So have you addressed that, or with the manufacturers?
Manufacturer does. So that's the one positive of it being new, is that all that is handled by them, and that has been addressed. But again, if we hear it, whether it's schools listening or board members, please let us know to make sure that we have them address that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Member Perez? Okay, thank you. Member Hahn and then Member Washington?
Thank you, Member Combs. So I appreciate this coming forward. I certainly support the why this is so important to our schools, to our children. I'm trying to drink more water. But So I like the policies, and I think they're important, and I also appreciate the fact that the district is already kind of ahead of the curve on this, and we're just making it more formal. I think my concern is there's a lot of how, and the how should be left up to the superintendent and the staff on how to implement this, the timeline, and they have a strategy to do that. So I think section 1 is great. That really talks to the why this is important. I think where we get into the weeds for both, and I'm going to address both policies because my comments really are for both of the water policies. I don't think I need to repeat myself for the next discussion. So on section 3, where in A, that's really the how it's going to be implemented. I think, again, we kind of step out of our lane when we start directing the superintendent and staff. So maybe that consideration can be, easily accessible water must be freely available across school campuses and high traffic and common areas, period. And then the how that is implemented goes off to the superintendent. That would be one recommendation. And then going to the next page under F, I'm on increasing water access in schools. Again, F has a lot of how. And so it could say students, teachers, and staff shall be allowed to bring and carry approved water bottles. This almost needs to be under, that's more of a code of conduct. So I don't know. I mean, I think that we can discuss that more, but that's kind of how I saw it. And maybe it needs to be in both places. Maybe it needs to be in the policy and the code of conduct, just because I think that the misuse of water bottles is subject to disciplinary action. I think we need to address that in code of conduct as to how we're defining misuse, because that could be very different for every one of us, right? I mean, what misuse might be. So that's some consideration for that one. The next one, it's pretty much the same under section 3B. I 1, 2, and 3 bullets. That's more the how, and I think you could just say the appropriate authority. Well, I don't even like B because I don't like that it says it really ties the hands on approving something that's way outside water filling stations. So I think we need to rethink how that one is written. And then D, again, it gets really into the weeds. It could just say student, teachers, and staff should be allowed to bring and carry approved water bottles if you want to include it, but I think then it also needs to go to code of conduct because it uses the misuse of water bottles. And then for 4B, there's a lot of missing information, the date, the amounts, so that would need to be filled in before I would feel comfortable pushing it to a school board agenda item. So I think we can work on this a little bit more and then tighten it up. Maybe I like the idea of Member Vaughn, I almost said Hahn, to combine the two and bring it back with some of the, whatever other input folks have. And that's all my comments.
Member Washington?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to speak on F section, and I agree with Member Hahn on this. We need to have a clear policy and procedures about using those water fountains and so forth, because as we know, students don't be students. They're going to throw water, they're going to do all the things that they're not supposed to do, but they're students, and we need to have a clear policy and procedure so we don't give them consequences, so everybody will understand. Because I can see where someone could bring a water bottle into the library or media center and have a consequence. And we need to have a clear procedure and policy for that. I think that's important to have, because the code of conduct is very important, and that falls under the code of conduct. And Mr. Farkas, I have another question. So how about the regular water fountains in schools? Are we going to convert that? How would that work?
So the cost of that would be substantial. So what we've done is when they got turned off during the COVID pandemic, we've gone back through and turned those back on. But that wasn't just a turn on. So some of the schools say, why is it taking so long? Because when we went and turned it back on, back to the testing part of it, we turned it back on, had them run, and then tested those before we let students use any of those fountains. Okay. That was important. They'd been off for 1.5 to 2 years. Sediment builds up. So all those should be on at this time. Every once in a while I'll hear of a, hey, this one didn't get turned on, but across the district, all those should be back on. When we go and do a renovation at a site, it's an opportunity for us to do the touchless refilling stations. But as of right now, all the traditional water fountains are on and the touchless refilling stations.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to know, because I had a couple of my constituents say, well, they're only going to have the bollards, using
It'll
the
be
bollards.
both, yes, sir.
Both of them. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Washington. And I also think it's a great idea. One of the things that we want to do is, if you look at our policies, I mean, we have like 4 binders. It's like there's so much repetition. So I think combining one is a great idea. I agree with Member Hahn. I don't think we need to have the why. I think if it's kind of clear that this is what we're going to do, and then for the water bottles, it should be in the code of conduct. I just don't, I think we keep having things repeated and repeated and repeated, and we want to kind of clean up the policy. So I do think that we should kind of tighten it, shorten it, and maybe not put the how in it as well. So that's all I was going to say. Member Vaughn? Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate all the feedback, and I think that Dr. Hahn made a good point about kind of what the student code of conduct, when we got to F, and it talks about maintaining water bottles. I tend to disagree a little bit about Section 3. I think it provides clarity of the expectations. I think mentioning that, where we would like to see water access is important in a policy. If we're talking about one central location, or if we want to make sure it's available in hallways, cafeterias, gymnasiums, outdoor physical activity, facility lounges, I think clarifying what the expectations are, I think for me is not so much the how, but just again, making our expectation clear of what the policy should consist of. As far as when you were talking about some of the ones that might tie our hands going forward, I think you mean newly constructed buildings having the water filling stations. I'm kind of neutral on that. I would like to make sure that going forward that is a priority, especially if we're looking at retrofitting it. So I don't know if it's best to kind of go forward with the policy and then amend it if we see that it's tying hands, or, see if we need to change the policy. Like I said, I'm neutral on that, but I do like some of Part 3 when we're talking about the first policy where it's being clear. To me, B, water sources must be accessible to people regardless of age, ability, or disability, doesn't feel like a how. It just makes it clear again and reiterates in the policy what we're trying to identify. Okay. Oh, just A. So I think it's a good policy. I appreciate it coming through. I think we're all on board as far as making sure that we have access to clean and healthy water, and that should be a priority. And I think that, as stated, we could work on it a little bit and then bring it forward in the way that we can all agree on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Gray?
Yeah, in a nutshell, this is what I'm getting at the conversation. Number one, I do think we need to consolidate policies greatly. If you look at 7540.1.2.3.4, that's coming up. But that's a lot of things that can be consolidated in one. So consolidation, and next, when it comes to who does what and who's on first, if you remember Abbott and Costello, every policy denotes what the superintendent does and what the school board starts it, has that verbiage, the rationale, and then the superintendent does the process and the procedures. So this entire, and I'm now grasping, this is an American Heart Association that doesn't follow the normal standard of policy writing. So all the remarks, which are very well said and true, why do we even get into the weeds when we talk about how drinking water can bring forth cognitive development? It's a positive thing. You have all these affective words, but true policy, and you all know this, doesn't have, and it's more of a straightforward. Superintendent does whatever, and the school board matches this. Kristen, you've done a great job, and I don't want to mock your hard work, but truly, this is kind of fluff, right?
We'll bring back, based on your feedback, a proposed draft for your consideration.
Thanks.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is, I think we have consensus that we want to combine them, and then I think maybe you have 2 different policies, one that has all the additional things and one that doesn't, and then I guess we'll make a decision on that, which would be best, right? I mean, then we'll look at that. Because, I feel the same way. I feel like a lot of this verbiage, like, Member Gray said, a lot of those words, we don't need that. I mean, that's not really what policy's for, right? I mean, I think it just becomes now we're on a fifth folder, with policies. So that's all. Anybody else have anything? Okay. So we'll go on to the next one, which is the Member Hahn, you brought forward an assignment within the district, 5120. Member Hahn?
Yes, this was really brought forward due to some constituent feedback, actually from constituents all over the district who have had to move during their child's senior year. And, it's difficult. We all have kids, and there's a lot of reasons people have to move, especially right now. Affordability is probably the number one reason. And families are going through a lot of financial trauma right now. And so it was really about allowing the senior to finish out their school year at that original school. If they began 12th grade and then they had to move mid-year. So again, if a transfer is approved, the parent or guardian assumes full responsibility for transportation. So it's, not a cost. We did reach out to staff to see if it was going to be a hardship, and, it was deemed no. And that's the reason I brought it forward. Certainly if the school choice office thought it was going to be a hardship on the schools, but they don't have a lot of these cases, but, it would be, and typically they do try and work with families in this situation. But it would be nice if it was in policy that families didn't have that added stress. So I just wanted to bring it forth to see if there was any consideration. Again, this is very, student focused and just trying to allow them to graduate at the high school they started at. It doesn't apply to 9th, 10th, or 11th. It's strictly 12th grade. So it's very, very specific to that group of students. So I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Member Hahn. Member Gray?
I agree, and again, Member Hahn, this does reflect a student-centered concern, and I agree because that's the first and foremost prerequisite in my mind. What's the best for the welfare of our students? But attached to this, for the many boundary changes we've gone through, at least previous years, one of the major concerns has been the siblings, and I don't know, Chris Farkas is not here, Superintendent Davis. The main concern is what do we split the siblings apart? Now that's a magnet school nightmare, but we still have to face that when we have these big subdivisions like Panther Trace, and you have Collins, and you have school choices. Or you could take my grandkids. They're both today together in the same school, but, if the boundary changes, do we split children? Do we split the children? And I only say this, not that I'm going to say I agree or disagree. I'm saying this because if we infer that there's a large population that are very concerned about the sibling situation, then perhaps we need to address it. Dr. Hahn, I totally agree with what you're saying with the 12th grade. So this is in addition. Should we not consider the siblings, as Matt Romano in the Magnet School has done in the past, but he has not yet he doesn't have it written. So that's why this continual battle. It's not in policy.
Yes, ma'am, through the chair. I think it's something to consider, definitely. I do agree that 12th graders should have the availability to stay in their home school and to be able to transition, or the school that they've been in for so many years. But historically, school leaders also look and work with the families for sibling preferences as well related to this particular issue. I would say that we would probably want to make certain that sibling transitions with that 12th grader. But we have to go back and look at any type of numbers, look at the overall capacity utilization. I personally don't think it'd be a big deal allowing siblings to be a part of this transition as well, because we're only particularly could be talking about a handful of families as they move and transition from one school to the next.
Well, and the point is, when you have the military, which is also on line 34, 35, that they are exempt from attendance boundary, we can certainly put in perhaps the siblings. So that would be an addition for the board to consider, since we hear this, and to prevent the noise and
Yes,
the
ma'am.
concern.
And through the chair, I would say the sibling preference would have to be at that particular high school. So anything else in the geographical location, if they have one that's in the 12th grader, one that's in the 5th grade, then openly we'd have to look at that 5th grader transition into the new boundary zone and protecting the student who's going to graduate to keep that community and sense of ownership and pride of their school as they transition out to the next steps.
And I agree with that. Well, thank you for that. And board members, I'll definitely want to hear what you think about what I was just suggesting.
Member Vaughn?
Thank you. So I'm just trying to get an understanding to make sure I understand this. So the policy itself specifically is saying, can we keep 12th graders in their assigned school even if the families move so there's not disruption? But as Member Gray mentioned, there is a part in here that talks 34, 35, students of active military families stationed at MacDill are exempt from attendance boundary changes and therefore may remain at their currently assigned school without transportation. So that would preclude the boundary analysis and changes that we're going through now, meaning that they would be exempt from anything that we approve in January?
For policy, military families have the availability to go to schools that they wish and deemed as they desire, as outlined in this policy.
So in theory, I support this because I think that military families seem to have the most disruption of anything, and providing some consistency, especially there, is really important because there's so much that's left to being moved around depending on what their job calls from. I guess my question and concerns are, I know there are other boundary considerations that we're talking about. In example, Carrollwood K-8 have been trying to make sure and create something that would work for them for the next school year. And I've been told repeatedly that we wouldn't bring anything like that around until the boundary changes have been decided. So I just wonder if this is a little bit early for that, considering how we're not looking at other boundary changes or other things until that process is complete. So that's what gives me a little bit of pause, is just because I know we've been holding off on other things based on wanting to see what it looks like after the consultants have finished everything and address a lot of other questions. And I'm concerned this might bring forth more questions and concerns about groups who are also trying to work on things previous to that completion. So that's my only concern, is I would, unless we're moving other things forward, I would maybe hold off on that piece of it until we've had that boundary change. But that's just one voice, and if the other board members really feel like this is important for stability, I can understand that perspective as well. Thank you.
Speak.
Okay. Thank you. Did you want to say something, Superintendent Davis? Go ahead, please.
Yes, ma'am. Through the chair, I would say that for this is about making certain we get 12th graders to the finish line and getting them to a place where they are successful and they have that continuity, which is so important, especially having two daughters transition to that grade level, or one transition and one out, and seeing this process. The other thing with Carrollwood K-8 is more of a configuration adjustment and I understand there are some boundaries maneuvered that would be recommended in that spot. But I think passing this would protect and allow us to be able to keep consistency for seniors, which is so important. As you know, the last 2 years, the Department of Education has adjusted concordance scores. They've moved SAT scores from 430 to 480. Students have struggled to be able to hit that threshold. A number of our students that are in their seniors now did not get a chance to take the 10th grade EOC, which they have struggled. And you'll see, because of the Department of Education moving and making some adjustments, the graduation rates will go down this year and next year, but not only in Hillsborough, but across the state. So I think the biggest thing, if we can create consistency now for 12th graders, it would help tremendously in so many different factors. But I understand the notion of related to making certain we do everything in unison. But seniors right now are so important, because this is that same threshold that in 2020 didn't get a chance to take some of the assessments as identified by the state.
Thank you, Superintendent Davis. I also see these as two separate, entities. The K through 8, I don't think has anything related with this. I really think that is by itself. for seniors. And I also don't think we can include siblings, because I will tell you, having two children, right, if you have a senior and then you have a 10th grader, you have to make a decision, right? If we continue having siblings, then we're never going to have our numbers right. We're never going to know. There's families of 5 or 6 children. That's going to make it very difficult to project how many students are going to come, and then the movement, and then you have somebody who's all of a sudden related to somebody else. I think you're just opening up a can of worms that way. I really do. I think just having this 12th graders protects the 12th graders. I think we can do it by itself. I don't think there's a need to add the siblings, and I think that we should move forward with this year, because I think parents knowing that a boundary change is coming and seniors knowing that they are able to stay in that school is very important. So I'd like to move forward with that today. Member Washington?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree 100%, because I know when I was a principal, when a senior would move, the families would move, we kept the seniors at the school. We gave them permission to stay at the school during that period of time, with permission from the district office. Because if you've been to a school for 3 years and then you come up on your senior year, your family move, it's not going to be good. So I agree. Let the seniors stay at the school and not have all this unnecessary automatically. If you're a senior and you want to stay there, you stay at the school, but you have to provide your own transportation. I think that's important. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Washington. Member Hahn, you had another comment? And
Just real quick, first, I completely agree with Member Combs, and I thank you for making those comments, so I'm not going to repeat them. But, and just to remind folks who might be listening and the board, lines 34 to 36 are on the active duty military families. This board unanimously approved that policy when I brought it forward might have been earlier this year, actually, maybe last year. So I appreciate that. And, again, for me, it was about giving those 12th graders having an opportunity to graduate with their peers. And giving them some stability, whether it's for 3 months, 3 weeks, or 6 months out of the school year. I appreciate the other issues that Member Gray and Member Vaughn brought up. I think they're important issues. They deserve really thorough discussions, and I think with staff input on the implications of those types of policies or decisions around rebounding. It's not really, part of today's conversation, but I certainly would agree that it needs to be a part of future conversations. Today, I just want us to consider the 12th graders, so I appreciate your consideration again.
Thank you. Member Perez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I work with military families, and I've done so for a period of 16 years now, they're in a constant movement. And our children, along with their parents who are in the military, also make a sacrifice. And they're constantly in a boundary change in their life. Because I've had some students that have been in 2 or 3 high schools, throughout their educational career. And this does not only affect their mental health, their grades, but also in solidifying friendships. That I see has an effect in stabilizing their lives. When, I look back at my high school career, Mr. Washington, we've known each other. I'm not going to say for how long. So, but I have friends that, I mentioned this to my grandchildren. When I told them how many years, they're like, oh, goodness, Grandma, you're old. But, there's military children that do not have the benefit of, having that friendship, that stabilizing relationships throughout their life. So, I, too, agree with this policy. I think it'll help them, not just in their high school career, but throughout their life.
Okay. Thank you, Member Perez. So I think we have consensus, right? Do we have consensus? Because we have quite a few. Did you want to add one more point, Member Gray? Go ahead, and then we'll close up and go on to the next policy.
I'm glad we have consensus. And regarding the siblings, I I would like to Kristen Davis to begin looking at that as a possible addition. The only reason I say that is because if it's not written in policy, that's the resounding voice that you'll hear from the public over and over. And I go back to the magnet schools. I mean, there's a hellacious amount of dissidence when we don't consider the siblings. And true, Member Combs, families do have 4 to 5 children, but that is not the norm. Your norm amount of children usually will go from 1 to 3. So, and as Superintendent Davis points out, it should possibly be a school site consideration. But if we don't allow a little bit of flexibility, then I think those voices of concern will affect the culture of the school in question. So we'll write something up and we'll bring it forth to the board. Thank you for your remarks, everybody.
Okay, great. So we have clarification that we're going to move with this policy, and then we'll, as is, and if we'll continue to look at other information regarding siblings. Okay, the next one, 5136, this I want to say is something that we could speak on for an hour. So I really would like to kind of limit it because I want to make sure that we get to student engagement. I want to make sure we get to the mental health referral process. So we want to make sure we do that. So I think this is something we could probably spend a whole workshop on. So let's try to everyone limit 1 or 2 comments on this so that way we can continue on for the workshop. Mr. Porter, I know you had something else about the agenda.
I want to concur with the chair on this. This was brought forward. There are no proposed changes to this, but several of you have indicated that you wanted to take a look at our cell phone policy for a couple different reasons. One, for security purposes, how they're used, but 2, overusage, kids on them all the time. Ms. Grace particularly brought that up. You can see this policy, lines 10 through 12, is pretty clear about what the intent is, that they shouldn't be used. But if you also look, this policy hasn't been updated since 2015, and we're in a very different world, both from a technology standpoint and from a real-life standpoint about cell phone usage. I don't know that you need any discussion today. We wanted to highlight this to show that we do have a pretty strong policy, and it probably is worthwhile looking at with security and with the chief of schools and with Mr. Connor and Mr. Davis for the next policy cycle. If the board wants to talk, they can. This was more to bring to your attention that we have a policy. It's pretty strong, but it probably needs to be looked at, and we would just sort of like to highlight that and bring it back in the next policy cycle.
Okay. And if any of the board members would just like to make a couple comments on this, I think this is something that is definitely on the radar for a future workshop or something that we really are going to engage in. But does anybody have any comments or anything? Because I know I'd like to say something. Member Gray?
And I'm glad we are bringing this up. And I also agree. The student safety, when we talk about human trafficking, grooming, sexting, the usage in the classroom definitely, to me, needs to be addressed, and importantly so. Our children, our testimonials that we receive, perhaps from Member Perez, your children, are very, very real. They are very concerned about what is the porn, everything being shared. So definitely a big conversation, not unlike the book conversation also. So what we're getting into is more the normalization, the fear, and it is a safety issue of being just being desensitized. And our children are also sharing information for tests with their earbuds. And, there's a lot of essential concerns around this particular. And if you look at, and I'll just shut up after this, but we have 4 policies that are joined into this. And I mentioned it, 75401, 750402, 03, 04. And also in 2015, we had a lot of restrictions on the usage of wireless. The superintendent absolutely made provisions that stamped the policy as, this is happening, I will not allow. Now we've totally opened it up where teachers don't have much control. Students are very much upset about what they're seeing, what they're being exposed to, and I can only imagine parents, what they are fearing. So I definitely agree. I think the workshop, whatever we commit to, needs to include the use of technology, the cell phone, and others. I also need to say that I want the book conversation also, because both of those categories are involving mature content, and our students are being exposed. How much does our board want to talk about it? I think we all want to talk about it. So I'd like to recommend both of them to be put together for future conversation. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Member Gray. I'm just going to say a couple things and then pass it over to my fellow board members. I think those are two separate things altogether, Member Gray. You know, if we're talking about books and then we're talking about phones, I just think those are two separate things. You know, as I looked at the student engagement and all the referrals and things like that, I definitely feel there's a very big tie to cell phone use and some of the things that are happening. You know, on Education Weekly that said cell phones in schools, a huge nuisance and a powerful teaching tool. So I think it can be such a powerful teaching tool. But as you start looking at data, we're seeing that kids are now using cell phones at 8 years old. If we don't start thinking about our policies early on, how it's going to start getting younger and younger. Kids used to get cell phones at teenagers. Now the average has it at 8 years old. The average teenager spends 7 to 8 hours on the phone. In 2020, 70% of schools increased for non-academic use. So the majority of students who are using their phones are using for non-academic use in school. And you can look at mental health, destruction of school bathrooms, fighting to videotape that, drugs, bullying, cyberbullying. We just had someone in Pasco County commit suicide with that, cyberbullying, profanity, pornography, and also the amount of cheating. Scores on the ACT in 2022 were the lowest in 30 years because the amount of cheating that is occurring in high schools with taking tests, listening to earbuds, copying, looking at Quizlet, for online classes, for Florida Virtual, Hillsborough Virtual. I have a high school senior. I went to Hillsborough High and did a in-depth kind of 3DE program. It was amazing what the students said about phones and earbuds. They thought there was overused in the classroom, overused in the hallway. You walk around high school sometimes, kids are watching Netflix movies. They're talking on the phone like they're at the mall. If you look around private, parochial schools, there are guidelines for phones. And I'm not saying we don't want our high school teachers to be the police of it, but we need to be forthcoming and look at what's going to come in the future. Eventually, you're going to have fourth graders sitting in lunchroom. It's getting worse and worse. And how do we really improve society and improve that? Cell phones are a great asset. We talk about emergency. Parents want their kids to have cell phones, but I think that there's a lot of destruction that's happening in our schools, and this is something that we really need to look at much closer. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. I'm glad that this policy is a reminder of what our policies are. Generally, I have way more concern in my district and my feedback with my constituents about what's happening with cell phones, especially with airdropping, which means that students have zero control over what gets airdropped to them. But what I find to be one of the biggest problems is a consistency. If we have a very clear policy, what it seems like to me is that instead of following this policy, administrators and teachers are kind of using their own judgment, which is fine, but if we have a board policy, then I would like to see more consistency on it. And if, phones are meant to be powered down while not in use or while instruction's happening and put away, then I think that we should make that a clear policy with all our administrators, and that should be consistent across the board, because again, what I'm seeing is one policy at one school, students being able to get away with one thing, another school having something completely different, and I think that sends a mixed message, and that's inconsistent. So whatever we end up finalizing, if we make changes on this or whatnot, I think that there needs to be consistency, and our policy needs to be reminded to our administrators, and it needs to be carried out on whatever we decide. And those are my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Hahn?
Member Combs, I just have a quick ask. So when we do bring this back for a more deeper dive, if we could bring back the policy as well as the student code of conduct, the discipline, because the last thing we want to do is create a policy that now kids are missing instruction because of an infraction. So I think we need to look at both side by side to make sure that, the discipline kind of matches the policy in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hahn. Member Gray?
So if we look at other counties that have policies that are basically addressing what we're talking about, if you go to Orange County or Pasco County, they absolutely put the line in the sand. In other words, their phones will be shut off from class time, and one county, Orange County, has it for 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So there's definitely districts that are really facing this albatross, which is really phone. It's a huge safety, and it's a mental health crisis for our kids. They are asking, and yet they're saying, no, I don't want to lose my cell phone. They're asking for some type of commitment from this board that we do something. And I see youth shaking their head. They know they're getting airdropped. They're concerned, and I am equally so. And of course, having teenagers, I can only imagine. But our grandkids, Member Perez, they're growing up quickly, and they see things they should never have to see, and a lot of them don't even know how it's being seen. It's just airdropped. So when I look at other policies from other nearby districts, I'm having to say, where are we? Why aren't we setting forth a vigorous policy that suggests that we are protecting our students as best as we can? The safety of our children is our number one school board precedent. In the Florida School Board Associations, have it on the page 1. If we're not going to do something, then I would suggest each of us start putting their heads and hearts together and say, what can I do to manage a little bit, just a little bit? Bring it back the way it was in 2015. Bring back safety. Bring it back. And I don't want to say anything more because you can see it's touching my heart and my children, my grandkids. And I'm looking around the room, and they know. You're all shaking your heads. You know what's going on. So at any rate, I hope that we do have that vigorous discussion. And I will say, when you start having infractions coming in from pornography or mature material, that not only is this a cell phone issue, it's coming into our libraries and books. And whether you all want to ignore that or whatever, I think it's all part of it. So time for us to get our boots on and start doing some work for the safety and well-being of our children. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Member Vaughn?
Thank you. I just want to clarify, because I know I had some questions when we just recently approved our student code of conduct about some of the issues with taking away extracurricular activities for kids who violated dress code policy. And I know the main consensus was that there was a committee who made those recommendations, and we wanted to honor the committee. So are we able to go back if we change this policy and relook at the student code of conduct and maybe go against what the committee thought in order to make sure that it's, the discipline that we feel is effective or restorative to make sure students aren't missing out on instruction or the things that bring them to school if we adjust this policy? Because it seemed like when we went through the code of conduct and I had questions, it was we're going to stick with the committee recommendations. So I just want to get clarity on that.
Yes, ma'am, through the chair. Once policy is adopted and implemented, we will make certain that our operation implementation is aligned to our policy. So we'll go back if there's needed to reconvene staff members to look at our code of conduct. We will go back and make any adjustments that are deemed necessary as outlined, so we have consistency with our policy. We also look at the code of conduct annually, and that allows us to be able to make adjustments as well. So, but absolutely, we can definitely go back with our team and make adjustments. We just got the biggest thing is for us to, any adjustments that are made, that we have time for implementation and articulate that to all of our students and to our families as well, and to our administrators, so they can plan for any changes related to the document once it's been adopted.
And we just reviewed it.
We did in the
board
summer.
meetings ago.
Yes, ma'am.
And then when staff brings it forward, the board still has the ability to decide whether they want to honor those changes or amend them. Is that correct?
we can always, once approved, we can always go back and adjust anything. It's a living document related to school improvement plans, related to code of student conduct. We wish we want to remain consistent with policy, at the same token, remain consistent with procedures adopted. But like I said, if there's stuff that we need to make adjustments is related to safety, security, we'll definitely do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. And as we move to student engagement, I just want to say one last comment. I just don't want to convolute what we're talking about, pornography and airdrops and things like that, with challenging a book school by school. You know, so as a district, I think we've been very good about challenging books school by school. It's working. You see districts around the state that are looking at us and saying that's great, and books are being challenged school by school. But when we start comparing a book to a cell phone and to the pornography, I think that's very dangerous. So I think we want to make sure we separate those very clearly. I just want to mention that, Member Gray. Okay, we'll go on and move to student engagement.
Do you need a short break while they get together? You guys? If you're fine.
Veering off into the.
Did you get my text?
I did.
Yeah,
I
so-
thought so, but
No, you did
swear to
nothing.
God, it was in the policy. No, I thought that there had been some comment about removing stuff without us having to do it as board members.
Got it, okay.
But I thought, I'm gonna go back and look.
It conveys did it before she left there.
Okay.
I think that was the thing. There's always been that dress code issue because everyone assumes the policy is very broad.
Hello? Okay, here we go. Okay, great. Well, thank you, everyone. We want to make sure we have a little bit over an hour, so we just want to thank everyone for coming. I'll let everybody introduce themselves. I don't know who's going to be leading this.
I can.
Okay, Superintendent Davis, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you, everyone, for coming this morning.
Thank you so very much, Board, for allowing us to really talk about student engagement. This is only a small part of what we do every day to be able to engage students in the learning process. But today we have a team to be able to review some of the major elements that we implement with our school district. I want to introduce Elizabeth Tanner, who is with our mental health. We also have our Assistant Superintendent of Exceptional Services, Dr. Hickman. We have Ernest Wood, who is our Executive Director of Turner Programs and DJJ. We have Josh Crystal and Katrina Hudson with the Office of Student Engagement. We also have Stacy Wren here today, with Climate and Culture Resource Teacher. Thank you. We have Toby Hartrent as well as with MTSS, and then we have Julia Sarmiento with SEL, who does really good work for us. So I'm going to transition to Mr. Wood right now, and he'll start to move this process. Gotta have a handheld.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. It's a privilege to sit before the board and talk about how we engage students in creating successful paths of, life in general. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Crystal.
Good morning. I'm Josh Crystal, the General Director of Student Engagement and Discipline. Sorry, is that okay? Better. I get to run the Office of Student Engagement with Director Katrina Hudson as well. One of the factors that we really want to kind of drive home is that student discipline and student engagement is a huge undertaking and a lot of tasks, and there's a lot of moving parts. We're just representing a lot of the experts here today. We have some people up here, but they're more in the audience. And we really want to get everyone just accustomed to who's involved and who has what different part in helping students re-engage or just in fact get engaged in school. So right now, and I actually appreciate that we were just talking about the Student Code of Conduct. The Student Code of Conduct does fall under the Office of Student Engagement, and we are responsible. To answer those questions, yes, we can absolutely make those changes as we see fit throughout the year. We meet 3 times throughout the year. In January is the first meeting to see all the new policy changes and how we can introduce them. And then there's a series of 2 follow-up meetings with the community to identify what issues are going on and how we can make it, what amendments we can change. So we can do it during the school year as well, as we found out here. So if there is policy that we do want to change, we can bring it up and have that discussion. We're also responsible for one of the big things is that when students just don't stop. And that's what our shop is really about, is when the other breakdowns happen throughout the continuum of trying to keep a student engaged, what do we do with the students that just don't stop? Our shop really got an opportunity and has the opportunity to connect with all the other services. And we're going to talk a lot about MTSS and all the different steps to help students. But what our shop is responsible for is what happens when it breaks down, if things weren't connected correctly, and what we can do to re-engage the students in schools. With that said, I'm going to throw it back to Ernest Wood, the Executive Director.
Yes, so we engage students on an MTSS process. All of our schools do, actually. MTSS State Rule 6A 6.0331, Board Policy 5411. All right, it's a 3-tier framework that organizes resources and supports to ensure students are successful in the areas we call the ABCs. And the ABCs are attendance, behavior, and course performance. The intensity of each tier relies on the student's need. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our supervisor of MTSS, Mr. Toby Hartram.
Hi, how are you? My name is Toby Hartramp, the supervisor of MTSS, and what Mr. Wood talked about is exactly right. The beautiful thing about MTSS is that the multi-tiered systems of support provide support for students and meets them where they're at. And it's not just for students that are struggling. It also enhances and enriches students that are doing well and performing well and make sure that we elevate them. But there's also students that may be struggling that need a little extra support. So it all hinges on the core system of instruction, and that is academics, mental health, behavior, attendance. It all falls under this MTSS umbrella. So we have a tier 1 or a core system that every student gets. Most of the time that's good enough for about 85% of students, but sometimes students need a little bit extra, and we can provide that through a tier 2, little bit of extra support. And for most kids, that's all they're going to need. But there's a very small portion of students, somewhere 5 to 10%, sometimes less, that need something more intensive and individualized to help meet the needs that unique student has. And that's what this framework is designed to do, is to provide and get those resources and get those evidence-based interventions in front of those students, all following a problem-solving approach that's driven by data.
All right, thank you. So let's look into the tiers. When we talk about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, we're going to go next with Julia Sarmiento. She's going to talk a little bit about social emotional learning and how she imposes that on the tier 1 subject.
So yes, starting the conversation around MTSS, we're tier 1s. SEL, social emotional learning supports, are all around supporting all students. It is proactive, it's preventative. A lot of the things that our department focuses on is it's everything that we do is aligned to the strategic plan. So, and also just being able to support all students, giving them that balance that everybody needs. We also are here to support our teachers with some of those pieces as well, with some of the professional development, some of the other programs that we have. They're designed to support each and every student. We also have in our department, we have the student success coaches as kind of where the ABCs, that's what a student success coach position was designed for, to support with academics, behavior, and course content. Mr. Wood actually was a part of designing a lot of that when that started. So we move up the tiers, but that SEL component is definitely to support the tier 1 systems that we have.
All right, next we'll talk about another Tier 1 service, which are our PBIS, and we'll go with Katrina Hudson with that.
Good morning. So what we want to get across with all of you this morning is about Florida PBIS and PBIS in general. And so basically schools thrive when students know exactly what to expect on campus. They know what those expectations are for behavior. So I serve as the Florida PBIS District Coordinator here for Hillsborough County, and I also am supported by Stacy Wren, who supports the Title I schools as well. So every school has some sort of Title I plan, some type of school-wide behavior plan. In those plans, it is outlined what's expected on campus, what's expected in the cafeterias, what's expected in the hallways, and all those major areas. Some of the breakdowns occur, of course, is because we need to teach and reteach throughout the year. So we encourage all of our schools to not only just do it at the beginning of the year, but also to reteach those skills throughout the year. For instance, we've had several hurricanes where we've missed school. Kids have been out of school a couple of days. That's a really good time to go back to say, hey, here's some things that we can do differently. Let's make sure that we practice what those responsibilities are. It's very important to see that PBIS is not a program. It's not something that you can just pull off a shelf. It is a framework. It is a way of work that a school does. So it reaches not only just the behavior of the students in the classroom, but also how they behave, how they interact with adults on the entire campus. Slides 13 through 15 that you have that outline some benefits of PBIS and what those Tier 1 behavior plans. It also talks a little bit about what some examples are. So you can definitely see that there's just a very small variety of the supports that we have on our campus. We have plenty more, but those are some of the major ones that most of our campus have. So the overarching goal is to increase alignment on each of our campuses by teaching, reteaching, encouraging, and celebrating the students so that they can reach their optimal level. Everything is connected to student achievement. So if they're behaving, they're attending, they're engaged, they'll be more successful in the classrooms.
I think to really even connect this to what we're dealing with the cell phone situation, the idea is that 80% of the students, we should be able to address about the cell phones and they'll stop. If we go and we talk to the students, we address in the morning, please put your cell phones away. 7 to 8 out of 10 kids will do exactly what we're asking. The problem, and then as we move to Tier 2, is why haven't 2 to 3 of those 10 kids stopped putting their phones away, and what do we need to do? And then maybe 1 to 2 kids of those 10, we have to go to something more extreme, maybe bring them out, bring them to the office, call their families. Why is it that we have to keep doing those things? And that's what we have to look at for every behavior. What are those things that we can do to connect for all students and then the ones who just aren't getting it? And that's where we land with how do we build policy and how do we address the students that just aren't getting it? And it's generally always around between that 3 to 5% of going the opposite direction.
Absolutely. So we also have some additional supports for our schools so that we can implement those best practices. So we have those culture and climate resource teachers. We also have behavior resource teachers in our elementary schools, as well as the success coaches that Julia spoke of earlier. So Ms. Stacy Wren, she's going to speak a little bit about the CCRTs and the behavior resource teachers.
New to this. So the climate and culture resource teachers are, we have one designated for every high school. Those are high school, actually every high school has one. We do have 4 current vacancies, but their primary role, along with the behavior resource teachers that are in elementary and middle schools, only a few Title I elementary and middle schools have those, but their primary role is to establish Tier 1 at the whole school. They're responsible for leading the team that creates the Tier 1 plan on campus. If they have PBIS, we encourage them to be the PBIS point of contact. If they are CHAMPS, they're a CHAMPS contact. Whatever behavior program they have going on there, we encourage them to be the lead on that because that's their Tier 1 framework that they have in place. We have them meet monthly. We work, we call it a PLC. We've put them into cohorts, area cohorts. Monthly, we meet with them to put tools in their toolbox, but also give them an opportunity to discuss what's working at their schools and how they best implement some practices. They've learned a lot from each other. This is only the second year that we've had the climate and culture resource teachers. We have had some turnover, but about half of them are the same that were there last year in the same position. Again, their primary role is to actively work on Tier 1, making sure that they're reaching 80% of that population. If their school is CCEIS, we encourage them to be on the CCEIS team or be the lead. And then we also have them, again, regularly meet to share the school data around behavior, presenting their trends that they're seeing, and lead the problem-solving process around behavior on their campus.
So also in our office, and this is the last thing, in our office, we also support the schools who, basically need some support in having those tough conversations with some of those babies who just aren't being successful. And so we also support those schools in that way. We sit with those parents along with the administrators, and we also do more of a modeling for those school leadership teams, so they're able to understand these are the best practices of how to have those tough conversations when students just aren't doing what they need to do and they've reached that Tier 3 level. So we develop action plans with the schools, and we just support that leadership team. That way they're able to be more successful on their own, and then we move to other schools who need that type of support.
Well, we'll move on. We'll move on to Elizabeth Tanner, because I know.
Thank you so much. I'm speaking today on behalf of my General Director, Holly Saya. She apologizes for not being here today. She's not feeling well at all, so I appreciate you letting me step in her place. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how our student services teams assist with the engagement of students on campus. Some of these members of the student services, of course, include our school counselors, our school psychologists, our health services, and our school social workers, We have some data up there to show our numbers of where we're at with that staff, but all of these team members work together to appropriately identify students that are in need of additional levels of support, either with their mental health, academia, or even Tier 1 behavioral support. Some interventions that we have in place that our student services teams either provide assistance with or perhaps lead at their school site are counseling services. I've got a whole bunch of them listed up there for you. We also provide Tier 2, Tier 3 social emotional learning support for school students that need skill building. If they're not successful in the classroom with obtaining the social skills that are appropriate to be successful in the classroom, we meet with those students, do counseling in small groups, perhaps individualized counseling. But if needed, we will connect students with our community supports for therapeutic type services at an intensive level. You can see on the right-hand side our partners that are in the community that work very closely with our student services team members, also with our mental health team, to ensure that students are receiving the appropriate mental health services, whether that's evaluation, medication management, intensive trauma, therapeutic services, and of course progress monitoring and follow-up with families on the services that we provide. The state, of course, provides us funds through the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Public School Safety Act to partner with these outside community agencies to ensure that students' mental health needs are being met. We have therapists that come into school sites and work on campus with students, as well through telehealth and at-home services. So those student services team members work together, they collaborate, they problem solve to ensure that students' emotional wellness, whole child approach, and mental health needs are being met. So in addition, we work very closely with our engagement office regarding discipline hearings. If a student is going through that process where they need to be identified as possibly a change of environment perhaps, or they need additional services, we look and provide mental health services as well. Is the student perhaps violent, threatening others because of an underlying mental health issue? So we have a school social worker that's assigned to those teams that work with families to identify possible services that might be appropriate for them. We want to work hand in hand with the families and give them a warm handoff to mental health services in the community if their child is posing behavioral disruptions on campus or perhaps in the community, to ensure that their mental health needs are being met. Sometimes those needs aren't warranted because they already have therapeutic services in place, or perhaps that is not what the parent wishes, but we do offer these services continually when they go through these type of discipline hearings to ensure that we're meeting needs on both levels, not only academia and behavior, but mental health needs as well. So I apologize for any confusion, but we have built into this presentation the mental health referral process. I know that sounded like it was a third presentation, but hey, let's just do 2 for 1 here, and we can talk about that mental health referral process right now. And if you have any questions for clarification, we're here to support that. Basically, anybody can approach any staff member perhaps and say that they have an area of concern. If a parent comes in and wants to speak with the psychologist, they can. If a teacher is concerned about a student, they can speak to the student services staff on campus at any time. Sometimes peers come up to the student services and staff and say, I'm worried about my friend. And even sometimes we have the students themselves come in and report. When that happens, the student services staff triages that. What can we do for that student? What's happening? What services do they have in place? Do they have any? Is it working? Is it functioning? And then as a problem-solving team, they determine what intervention is best. Sometimes school-based services are appropriate. We work with those students to make sure that they're academically successful. What skills do we need to give that child so that when they return to the classroom, they're engaged, they're learning, and they feel safe? If that is not appropriate and we need an intensive level of support, that problem-solving team kind of reconvenes and says, you know what, we need to refer to an agency. The student has more impact that we can handle at the school level, and we need those therapeutic interventions to come into place. So that referral process is ever-flowing, it's consistent. Those problem-solving teams meet. Like Toby had mentioned, that it's through that process, that multi-tiered system of support, that we look and see what's available for that child. How can our funding perhaps assist that family or that student, and then refer them to the appropriate service. In addition to that, we problem solve and progress monitor. So is that intervention working for the mental health needs of that child? Is that therapist appropriate? Is that company that we're working with a good fit? If it's not, we come back to the drawing table and see what else we can provide that family. And that is the referral process in general. It can come from any level of person on campus, any member of the family or who works with that child, and then we problem solve as a team at that school level and determine what is best. Oh, I think that's it. Yep, I'm done. Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Dr. Hickman, who will talk a little bit about exceptional student education.
Thank you. Although I don't need the slides, I just wanted to make sure you all were able to see them. Good morning. In reference to ESE, so as the Assistant Superintendent for ESE and Student Services, as I sit beside Ms. Tanner, who eloquently explained student services and the mental health process, please know that I'm here to speak about ESE. And 3 statements that I could use. Students with emotional disabilities, or ESE, are general ed students first, number 1. Special education is a service and not a place. And so when it comes to discipline, we have to remember that as we are navigating through the process with our students with disabilities, that we're making sure that they are receiving their services, whether it's before or during an intervention when it's needed to, when it comes to a disciplinary hearing. There's a number of steps that we must take that involve, that are structured, policies, procedures from IDEA, reauthorization 504, just a number of things that we make sure that we have to follow Florida statute and also our policies and procedures. And so it is one of those things that when we represent this 14% of the population in this division, in this district, then we have to make sure that they are receiving what it is they need. Now, in terms of ESE and how the role plays with this whole structure, we're definitely making sure that ESC is providing Child Find. They are assisting students with their educational needs, their behavioral and academic needs through their IEP, and also through FBAs and BIPs. We're making sure that our students who are displaying these behaviors have a behavior intervention plan in place. And we know that it's a struggle, but we're making sure that we monitor those things so that they receive those as well. In terms of, when we spoke to discipline, and we talked about there's a discipline flow chart that, that we follow, and we're just making sure that our students are receiving what it is that they need and that they are monitored throughout the process. And then we work collaboratively with the Office of Student Engagement to make sure that our students are following the continuum of services, that they are, if they have to have a change of environment, then that they receive what they need there as well. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Hickman. So let's back up a little bit and let's talk about what happens when those tiered services are not working. So we have Tier 1 services in our traditional sites, and then we have Tier 2 services, and then we have Tier 3 services. When those services don't work sometimes, that student lands in the Office of Student Engagement. Now, oftentimes that student goes back to his traditional site, and they kind of beef up the services there to provide successful paths for that student. But when they don't, they end up landing in 2 of our success centers. We have 2 success centers here in Hillsborough County, North Tampa Success and Brandon Success. Now, those sites we want to run pretty much like traditional sites. I mean, students are still getting their academics as they would at their traditional site. However, we want to provide a little bit more. Our Tier 1 services are beefed up a little bit more in those sites. This summer, we trained all the student services units on restorative practices, so we have that implemented in our sites there. They also work on an MTSS process just like a traditional site. As you see the numbers here, in the past we have 4 years of data here. Last year was a difficult year for us. We saw our students came back and they were, the whole country was a little bit in turmoil a little bit, so a little bit more rambunctious. But our numbers are increased. But this year, as you can see, through the Office of Student Engagement, our numbers are starting to stabilize out a little bit, and we're getting things back on a level plane. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Crystal again, Office of Student Engagement, who sends our students to our success centers.
All right, thank you. So what we're looking at right now is this is the data that talks about the trend since 2016-17. What had happened before? We've been here 2 years now. Then this is going into our 3rd year of operation. Our first year in 2021 was a little bit of a misnomer with students and e-learning being an option. But what you can see with the data behind me and in front of you is that we are seeing more students. We statistically see more students, but we are returning more students back to school into a traditional setting with supports. So the key was to have these really rough conversations, and if anyone's been in a disciplinary hearing, we run about 11 to 14 a day. Because of the overt behaviors, and you're going to see what we're dealing with at the school level and why it's escalated to a district level response. But when we are connecting with the students, we're connecting them with services, what's going on, and what's available. To Ms. Tanner's point, we have the ability to do mandatory counseling. When some of these students who are aggressive behaviors continuously fight, the trauma that they're going through, we can connect them through services that we've connected with. We even have a full-time social worker in our meetings as well to connect them with services. But you can see through the last year, and right now we are also trending down. We have had less hearings through Q1 this year than we have had in the last 2 years, which has been a big success for us. So what you can see right now, and this is the referral data from 2021-22. And what's really astounding about this is yes, there's 140,000 referrals, but when you look at roughly 57,000 of them, almost 60,000, are for students not attending class. These are the referrals of students that, with all the teacher training, with all the things that we could do for supports, if the students are not in the classroom, we are not able to connect with them and give them the services they need. So it's breaking down the data, and that's a lot of what our shop is responsible for. Looking at the data, where is it happening, where are the issues happening. So when you look at what are without skipping and tardies, this is also inclusive of those annoying behaviors that students are doing in the classroom, as well as some of the more aggressive behaviors. When we look at right now where we stand after Q1, we are very similar in tardiness and skipping is the big problem that we're dealing with teachers. Because every time, even if a student has to deal with a referral, they're being pulled out of class to have to deal with the referral about what happened about them not being in class. So this accounts for more out of class time than simply just skipping the original class. So what we have is, you see the surprise of dispute, fighting, and this is what we're seeing, the trends around the country as well. In the Q1 data from this year comparative to other years is actually looking like it was about on par. It almost starts to look like at the moment of where COVID came in, everything just sort of paused, and the students came back. And they came back not necessarily connected with any issues. It hasn't gone overtly worse, but it's almost where it was when we left. So it was like it took a hiatus, the problems, and they went away. Now we're back in school, and it's how can we reconnect those students. So you can see that this year alone, but when we also start to break it down by teacher, the majority of referrals are not happening in the classroom. They're happening in the bus stops, they're happening on the bus, in transition, in the hallways, in the bathrooms. Wherever there is the least amount of, and the students know, they're very smart, they're savvy, they're smart. We talk about cell phones. They use it to coordinate efforts. We deal with more fights that were coordinated than just we bumped each other in the hallway and then something, ensued. We're dealing with, it's a coordinated effort with more than just one student, and that's where we're seeing the trend happening. So when you pull out where it's happening, the classroom, it's not where it's happening. And you can see below, we talked about the arrest data of what happened, and it is trending down. But please understand, we stand by this. We do not arrest. These arrests are happening because of the sheriff's office or the TPD, where the parents have pressed charges in the case. We're not the ones pressing charges. It is, in fact, the parents of other students. So we have had a dramatically fewer arrests over the past 2 years. When we start to look at, this is what we're talking about when we have the most amount of referrals, is coming from non-attendance. What we see here right now is non-attendance accounts for 4 types of referrals. You're looking at leaving class, skipping, tardies, walking off campus. Okay? These are the bulk of the referrals. For aggressive behaviors, there are 12 types of aggressive behaviors: robbery, burglary, physical attack, fighting. There are 12 different types, but you're looking at only 15% right now of the referrals. So even though it feels like it's all of them, it feels like it's so many of them, it is still fewer students that are doing it. They're just offending at a little bit higher levels, okay? So when we look at over the past couple of years about how it's trended, it has trended that way. It's the students are not attending class, not necessarily doing something inside the classroom. ISS and OSS, we do wish that OSS was not the go-to. I mean, it would be beneficial if it wasn't the go-to. But the reason is because of the overt behaviors. They're using OSS to separate the students when something nefarious is happening. Not because they want to, but because of 80% of the referrals that we see, there's a victim. And the best way to separate a victim from the offender is through suspension. Not ideal. It's not the ideal, and there's a lot of more training and more policies that we're going to work on what those next steps would look like. So that's for the data, and in those next steps, we talk about what we're doing and what we've seen ourselves and worked with all the different groups to coordinate efforts. And we're going to work together. We've gone out, we've spoken at South County, we've spoken to families, we've engaged at churches. It's about bringing in the community efforts and how we can even tie that to the code of conduct to get a better tight grip on the student behaviors.
Thank you. At this time, we'll turn the floor back over to the superintendent.
Thank you so very much. This time we'll get back to the board, allow the board to interact with staff and ask any questions so we can continue to improve and identify how we connect with students through student engagement.
And thank you all for the preparation of all of this. It was really interesting spending days, looking at this is very interesting. So I want to thank each and every one of you for that. We'll go ahead and get started. We first will start with Member Perez.
Thank you very much. First I want to thank you for the presentation and the fact that I'm seeing that the emphasis is on increasing the mental health professionals here in Hillsborough County Schools. And I see that from 2018 to now, we have more professional staff on board. I do have, when the parents call me that they receive a referral for interventional services, the child brings that referral home, and the parent tells me they have no idea what to do with this referral. Like, the child brings it home, the child has no idea why it was provided to them, and the parent has no idea what to do or where to go with this referral. And so I want to speak also, because it's normally the demographics of these referrals are normally with our Latino and our Black students. So I want to go to page 29, because for me it's very alarming. The rates of Black and Latino students being placed in or sent to alternative schools between 2016 and 2022, to me, is alarming. It continues to grow, and if we have referrals or the mental health referral process to assist these children and their families, why is it that in 2021-2022 school year, we had 518 Black students and 279 Latino students being sent to alternative schools? And here in Hillsborough County, our Hispanic population is growing. This is not acceptable to me whatsoever. And the only time these numbers decreased was between 2020 and 2021, and that's during the year of the pandemic. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm just alarmed by these numbers and very concerned, especially when we have the student engagement process, we have mental health referral process, we have all these supports in place for our students, because we all know, well, I know as a board member, as a community involved member, that once a child is sent to an alternative school, the likelihood of them graduating is very low. So I would like some answers to these very alarming statistics, please.
Sure. One of the things that we focus on is the actual event and what occurred. And when we look at the event, when we pull out everything else, these are events with students that have victims on campus. And we are limited into options of what we can do with those students. One of our goals is to try and move them to another school if we can, but often what happens is transportation becomes an issue. And the only place we can provide transportation is to one of the alternative schools. So when we're looking at what the incident was with victims, that is the population size. Now, we are still dealing with less than 1% of our entire student population. We have seen last year 1,721 students. So we roughly see 0.06% of the entire population. However, I don't disagree that the racial breakdown is alarming, but what we first look at is the event and what happens. And what we take into consideration is victims on campus and where we can put students. So when we break down by incident, which we actually can do, you'll see these are all victim-related incidents.
And through the chair, you got to remember, the majority of students that we serve as a collective are students of color. And when you go back to 2016, 2017, where we had, 32% of our Black students were sent to alternative school. We're down in 21, 22 after a pandemic, and then in 16, 17, 20%, and we're sent to the alternative school. We're at 16.2%. So you see movement. Is the movement as aggressive or significant as we'd like to see? But it's definitely movement being able to address learners every single day. We know it's a growing problem. We want to make certain that we have all the wraparound services so they stay in school and they stay in traditional settings that allow them to be successful, because we want them to be exposed to different general educational, traditional educational experiences, whether it be extracurricular activities or whether that be CTE programs, initiatives, or just clubs in general, to be able so they can have ownership in that particular school. The good thing is if we identify a learner that's making a poor decision, an undesired decision, we have to be able to make certain we give them the necessary resources to be successful so we can grow them back into the traditional settings. Unfortunately, sometimes it is that modified schedule, it is that alternative setting that allows them to come back to their neighborhood school to be successful.
I understand that, but when I'm looking at the other numbers, when you have white, multi-racial, Indian, and Asian, those numbers are steady. The numbers for Black and Latino are alarmingly increasing. And that, for me, is unacceptable. Just absolutely unacceptable.
You can also see, and if I may, that the number of students who are returning to school has also increased at that same rate. Of those same racial breakdown, the same racial profile, we're also connecting those students with services and sending them back to school. So one of the problems we're having is we're seeing more students because they're referring. But if we hold true to those numbers, we'd see that it's actually being more sent back as well, if you look and connected with services. One of the big things we know is that you're not wrong about alternative schools, but changing the perception and what we offer at the alternative schools is where we're working. The idea is to make them more therapeutic and more designed to address these student behaviors, because we can't change if there's a victim on campus. A physical attack is a physical attack, and what makes a student a victim will always make a student a victim, and that's where we have to also connect with that. There is a victim on campus, and what do we do to make sure that doesn't happen? And where do we have them placed? We definitely need more services, and what we can do to make that more robust. I absolutely agree.
Thank you, Member Perez. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for these success centers. I know that Superintendent Davis and I had a conversation, I think over a year ago, about transforming our EPIC centers into restorative practice centers. And I'm glad to see the name change and some of the practices that looks like, and after our conversation. And I'd really like to tour one of those soon. I know one of them's in my district, and get an idea of what that looks like and you know, how we're helping with restorative practices. Some of the concerns that I have are obviously around our ESE students. You know, I know that when we reference the page 29, I've asked for students with 504s or IEPs to be included in this data so we can get an idea of how many of our students who, you know, are ESE are getting referrals or caught up in our disciplinary cycle and what that looks like, to make sure that we're training our staff and our teachers to accommodate them. I know that, you know, in some of the schools where maybe they have less of an identified ESE population, that some of the positive behavior systems that we have often leave out our ESE students, because if there are students that have impulse control or other issues, they're not always getting the same rewards as typical students who demonstrate the behavior that is usually identified as part of the school pledge or whatever that is. And a lot of the students who have 504s or IEPs don't earn the same amount of rewards, and that starts to affect their confidence. Sometimes some of those schools have school functions as a reward as part of their positive behavior incentive programs, and those students who have IEPs or 504s who don't earn those rewards are excluded from those community events. And again, that sends a message and is part of the problem. So I'd like to really think about our positive behavior incentive system and making sure that it's geared for our ESE students so they have obtainable goals, and that teachers, as part of their IEPs, identify those and give them the opportunity to build rewards as well, so they don't feel like they're part of a population that isn't well behaved, or again, if they have impulse controls or other issues that are part of their diagnosis, they should be included in that. And I see in a lot of schools that they're not, and that starts to be a problem. You know, I appreciate Member Perez always advocating for students of color, you know, and talking about the discrepancies. You know, one of the questions that I had when you speak about our mental health referral, and, you know, probably in communities where there's a lot of underdiagnosis or misdiagnosis, understanding that those resources are there, or what to do with them, or what that looks like, I think is important, and making sure in those communities where there's a tendency to have less of a diagnosis when it comes to mental health or other issues that we offer supports for, to make sure that we're engaging those families so they understand that when they do get a mental health referral, exactly what that looks like, or that there is an opportunity for a mental health referral, or that we do have, people or places to refer them to if their students or their children are struggling, and how we can offer supports for that. Because I think that there is like a coexistence of lack of diagnosis with students who do need 504s or IEPs or other supports because they do have mental health challenges, or they do have undiagnosed learning disabilities or other neurodiversities that we could really accommodate. I think that if we focus on that, we would start to see a correlation. I was also wondering, with the mental health referral, how early, so in elementary school, that's a possibility, because I feel like early identification is also something that we should be focusing on, that sometimes by the time you get to middle school or high school, if a student does have trauma or is dealing with mental health challenges, it's kind of, you're late on the game if we're starting to offer services at middle and high school. So does that go down to elementary school, or are elementary school parents aware of that, or are teachers?
So I'm just going to, where we come in is behavior is a late warning system. So often by the time we know, it's like the student did something. So that's where, if it's so nefarious, they end up in our shop. So elementary school, and I'll let Ms. Tanner talk about the connection at that level, but we're mandatory at our level. So to answer your question, the behavior, sometimes we see it exhibited, but it's too late now, we have to address it. But that's where we get to make it mandatory and where we get to connect the services. It's not a great answer, but it's at our moment of where we can make it mandatory. Now, prior to that, it will be Ms. Tanner.
Yes, our mental health services are provided for not only our pre-K students all the way through 12th grade. So with our younger children, we can offer different types of therapy, like play therapy or family therapy, where we involve the parents, where they can get the assistance they need to be the appropriate role models to assist with the mental health goals of that student. But we have referrals all the way down from pre-kindergarten, and we refer to our community partners, or they will receive school-based services through our student services department all the way from pre-K till 12th grade.
So I don't think enough parents know that. I know there are a lot of parents with elementary school children who feel like they're managing mental health issues and they don't know how to mitigate that or what that looks like, or, if they don't have the means to pay for those services. So I think we need to do a better job of making that clear and letting families and even teachers, right? I've worked in some schools where kids have been Baker Acted, and I don't think that even the teachers knew that. I'm talking elementary school, first graders have been Baker Acted, and I never heard any conversation about mental health referrals and offering support. So I think we need to make sure that we do a better job of making sure that those options are available and those services are things that we provide. I have a lot more to say, but I'll get back in the queue if I need to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Hahn?
Thank you, Member Combs. There are always issues with the reporting, the fidelity of the reporting of your quantitative data, especially in behavior in schools. There's always a little bit of a reluctance on the teacher's part to report certain incidents. Principals, this is coming from my experience in schools. And so looking at the qualitative data along with your quantitative data that we also see on a daily basis through parents reaching out, students, we hear from teachers at school board meetings about the state of the behavior in our schools. And if you triangulate that data with your hard data, I think you're going to find it's not as stable as you think. And the violence seems to be increasing. I have never received more communication from the superintendent around guns, knives, violence, threats of violence than I had in the past 6 months, more in 6 months than the last 4 years. So that's really concerning to me. I wasn't going to start with the data, but, and I do agree with all the points that my colleagues brought out with the data, so I'm not going to repeat that. I have the same concerns for the same groups of students. So I think you need to look at more than your hard data to get a real true picture of what's happening in schools and classrooms would be my first recommendation. Because we're looking at it, I think, through that lens, that very, we're looking at the qualitative and quantitative data today. As a long time, my entire profession outside the school board has been in special education. So I'm really familiar with MTSS and PBIS and restorative practices. When you read the research on it, it's done in very controlled environments. It's very impressive, the impact research. But a school district as large as this is vast. It's really the fidelity of the implementation of all the things you've talked about today is what makes it successful. And it's been very hard over the years. And, Member Gray has been a great supporter and really educated the board on PBIS, and I appreciate that. But what the takeaway is, I think, is you have to have the fidelity of the implementation, because there's a lot of gaps that can occur. And a lot of students can fall through those gaps. And we saw that play out in Broward County a few years back. And families have to live with that for the rest of their lives. And I never want to be on a school board where that happens. But as we get these reports week after week, I'm catching my breath more and more. And I'm feeling like we're really teetering in a very dangerous territory right now. So I'm concerned, and I guess my feeling is that what you're presenting today is really not doing what needs to be done in regard to keeping schools safe and making parents feel safe and students feel safe and teachers feel safe, and we see it over and over and over again. The violence has reached really, I think, a breaking point for our teachers and many of our students, the bullying. And how are we seeing that play out with our students? We're seeing suicide on the rise just recently, and it's heartbreaking. So, and I guess my question one is, it's not working. Everything you presented today. How are you identifying your gaps? I more or less want to hear, we know that there's a lot of issues in our schools around behavior. We know it's driving teachers. It's one of the things that drives teachers out, paras out, bus drivers out, parents away from our schools. And we need to see something working a little faster. Again, suicide. That is, heartbreaking. And I think what we kicked off a few weeks ago, we were at a press conference around how kids can get more support immediately. But I just had a suicide in one of my schools in the last week. And we're not, there is a misstep here. We have all these great things on paper, but something is happening in the implementation side that is not reaching our students at the level we need them to be reached to help them get into a better, more productive place, to help kids feel safe, to help teachers feel safe. I don't know what that is, but something is not clicking in our schools. This all looks great on paper. I think MTSS is great, restorative practices is great, BPIS is great, but we're not hitting the mark yet, and I'm really, really concerned. So, I know it's a really hard job you all have. That's not lost on me. I know this is a very difficult place we are in society, but, I just can't bear losing one more student. I just can't bear it. My heart can't take it anymore. So I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you, Member Hahn. Member Gray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank each of you whom I've worked with for many, many years. I'm saying maybe almost 6.5 years. I will tell you that I am one of your biggest fans, but I will also say that the reality is, and Toby, to your point, it begins in the classroom. Discipline begins with the classroom, maybe even you can argue the bus stop. You all are in the repair mode to help facilitate, get back together, let's filter you back, integrate you into the classroom again. What happens is the reality, and I will suggest also that violence is definitely escalating. What happens is when you have lack of teachers, inclusive Member Vaughn, ESE teachers, when you have lack of social workers, when you have lack of school psychologists, when you have real lacks of guidance counselors, quantitatively, there is a huge lack. We know that. You've got other counties competing, maybe better salaries, So what happens is when you have less of the human resources, students have more of a tendency to not only escalate bad behaviors, but in a grandiose fashion, school fighting, violence after school, during school. So the problem really is, and this is not just true of our district, Superintendent Davis, many districts are facing this teacher shortage and staff shortages. But that's what happens. Your job, and you're doing a great job, is capturing those students and trying to get them back into an even keel. I've never worked with such an expert staff in my life, and I've been an educator for many, many years. And I can't thank you enough, and I say that with such validity. PBIS, let's talk about that for just a second. Yes, Shake, you probably remember, Doretha Edgecombe started at Middleton years ago. We had a tremendous escalation of problematic kids. Then 2016 came around. That was my first task, was to study what discipline behaviors we can do to help the disproportionality of suspension. We wanted to keep the kids in the school. All right, let's say it's morphed now. We have more of a violent trend after 2020 COVID. So what do we do with the violent children? And of course, Chief Newman, who's over there, we've had safety town halls trying to commit to our parents that we are very safety orientated, and that has been done. But there's only so much that you guys can do beyond what your scope is. And I'm not happy with it. I'm almost suggesting in the 2014, and maybe Shake remembers, when we had zero tolerance, that meant that if you had anything going on, out you go as far as violence. I mean, it was huge, and kids were very intimidated. I don't want to go back to that part because that was not I wasn't a proud member of that team, but what we're really hearing from Member Hahn, and all of us know that we're getting the violence. Years ago I wanted the whatever those screens are before you go into the into the school, metal detectors. I wanted that years ago because after seeing all these things, 2016, 2017, 2018, you start thinking, oh my God, when is a school shooting going to occur? So I'm not expecting you all to answer that. I'm just thankful that you're capturing and taking care, keeping our kids in school, making them very workable members of society, and hopefully successful graduates. So that's what I wanted to say. And also last, when we talk about COPs, we used to call them COPs, change of placement, now it's change of environment. It is statistically proven, and you all should have this data, and I know you do, and Shay McCrae, whoever she is, she has it. When we have full fidelity, and that's a big if, because teachers still need to be trained more, right, the same, and so do principals. When there is full fidelity of a system, be it PBIS or anything, a Leader in Me, and don't tell me about CHAMPS, because that's more of a routine, how to line up correctly, etc. Then there is a difference between a change of environment, double digit, to a change of environment, maybe 2 or 3. It's just that simple. But it has to be, to the point of Member Hahn, it has to have full fidelity. So here's my recommendations. Number 1, trauma-based teaching. We've got to de-escalate the violent behavior. These kids are coming, you know this, they're traumatized in many cases, and they're desensitized, and that goes back to cell phones. Second, I definitely think that we need more PD on the mandatory, if you want to make it mandatory, how to do PBIS. You know, I know we're doing a great job, but do all our teachers and principals have that? And Stacy Wren, we've been together for many years. We know it's not true. New principals, Superintendent Davis, you've hired a lot of them. How much are they involved, invested in full fidelity PBIS representatives? We could do a better job, don't you all think? So, I mean, on the PBS. But anyway, my comments are, we haven't filled the violence gap. No, it's a growing concern. But I don't expect from you any more than what you're doing a great job, is what I want to say. Just those two recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray and Member Washington. And just a reminder, it's about 11:49, so if we have about 11 minutes, and I know a few other people want to be back in the queue. Member Washington?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I want to thank you all for your presentation. We got to realize something, because I've worked at some of the toughest schools in Hillsborough County. We are not fighting the school system, we're fighting the community. Because many of those students come into the school district from the community. And now, when they come into the school district, we have to repair them. We have to fix them up. We're doctors. We have to make sure that everything is right. So, I applaud you for your efforts, but until we can get in the community and start working in the community as the school system, sometimes we have to go in the community and have people to realize, because I remember back in the 90s, it was real bad. It was horrible in the 90s. I mean, really bad in the 90s. And what happened was the superintendent back then, we had Dr. Sickles. He and General, and some of the deputy superintendents, right, and they went out in the community and started being involved with the churches and so forth in the community to help these people. Because we fighting something is very hard to fight. It's difficult. It's almost fighting a war where you don't see the enemy. So we have to keep that in mind. Number two, as I look down here and I look at the blacks and the Hispanics, we know we have to concentrate on that, because we have to zoom in on the problems. And the problem is with black students and Hispanics. We got to zoom in. We got to get these parents involved, because we can't do it by ourselves. I mean, I've been in that seat before many years, 9 years as a principal. You cannot do it by yourself. We're gonna need help. We're gonna have to talk to this. What student engagement? Sometimes you're gonna have to go out and meet with the parents and talk to the parents. And I have to agree. You have been really working hard to keep kids in school, because I can remember back when zero tolerance, this 518 would have been out of school totally. We used to kick up out of school because we didn't tolerate any. It was zero tolerance. We had no room for nonsense. And now at least we're sending them to all alternative school, the success centers. But that's too many. We got to work on those parents. We got to work on those students and eliminate this process where we have all these black kids in these centers. But we'll keep them in school, which is a plus. But we don't want them in there. They need to be back in the classroom where they're getting really a quality education. Because in the success centers, they're being educated, but not quality education, because you don't have enough people in the success center to do that. And I realize that. And the 270 Hispanic, we have to work on it. We have to zoom in on that portion of it. And last but not least, it's so important to work on the SEL. That's real important, because when these kids come into school, you got to work on their social and emotional, because they're not, when they're out on the streets, hey, it's no SEL. Baddest person win. They will not be defeated, because it's all about the strong survive. And that's how they bring it back in the school system. So we have to work on the SEL in the school system in order for these kids to be able to deal with conflict resolution. Hell, they'll fight for anything. You spill water, they want to fight, because they don't have good conflict resolution. They don't have SEL. So we need to work on these students so they can have all that in play And I think when we do that, we'll continue to progress. We're not going to make no giant steps because this has been going on for years. This is nothing new. But we just want to move slowly until we keep improving, and then we'll get to that point. And again, thank you guys for doing a great job. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Washington. And I don't want to reiterate what so many of the members have said, but I do think probably the most important thing is the leadership in the school. Who the principal is, it really sets the tone. I think it's really important. And I think Superintendent Davis, you've made a lot of changes, a lot of positive changes. And when you see that it's not the right change, we're not just putting people in there just because they've been in the district for a long time. I think that's really important. The other thing that nobody wants to talk about is that teachers need to be empowered. You know, a lot of teachers are not able to write a referral for an offense that is really maybe egregious or whatever because they're concerned about their numbers, and principals are saying, don't write those referrals. We need to remember that also there are times when we have to write the referrals. So it's not always just about the numbers, it's about the safety in the school. And I say this over and over. At the end of the day, we need more people at the schools. It doesn't matter, and I've said this over and over, when people were deployed at our schools, we had more people. There are people who were deployed at schools that decided not to come back to the district. The more people that we have in the schools, the safer it is going to be for everyone, and the better it is going to be for our schools. That having more people at the schools will allow people to go out and visit homes. Like I did 20 years ago when a child didn't come, I could go visit the school. I could call the parent. But when you are subbing and covering classes and you don't have time for that, how are you expected to pick up the phone and call? So I keep encouraging to having more people at the school site. And then finally, when kids are suspended, the way that we're moving them to the schools so that way they can do their out-of-school suspensions in schools, we need to continue to encourage those, creating those spaces. I think that's really important. If a child is suspended for 10 days, they shouldn't be at home for 10 days. They need to be at a facility, at a school, making sure that they're getting their education. You know, at the end of the day, as I thought about it, it's like, how do we really improve this? This is always going to be here. First of all, the trauma-based SEL learning is very important. Second of all, parent involvement. We've got to get those parents in there no matter what. And if we don't have the parents, we need the mentors. We need people at the schools to mentor these children. Kids just want to know that somebody cares. And that's why they're reacting, is because they're trying to get attention. We need to engage students with lessons, things that are interesting, you know, more hands-on, shop, things like that, to encourage students to want to be at school. And then finally, no question, the cell phones are an issue. You know, and earbuds are an issue. Those are issues. Is that going to solve everything? No. But we need to continue to do that. But at the end of the day, I think the more people that you have at the schools, the better impact it's going to be for students. No question about that. I thank all of you for all the work that you're doing. It's unbelievable work. I know how hard it is, and I just want to thank all of you for that. I know Member Vaughn, you had a question, and then Member Perez.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of respond to all of the conversation, whereas I agree that as we're having the conversation, and I hear what Dr. Hahn is saying, we get the emails, there is a lot of violence, it's concerning, but I believe that Member Washington made a point that the community is changing, and I know personally from the emails that I get, violence is reflected in our community right now. There seems to be, I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, the first thing I'm going to do is threaten violence, and that seems to be acceptable and that seems to be okay. And you guys can only mitigate what's reflected in our society so much. So that's why I think it's important as a school board to continually reiterate that violence isn't acceptable, right? From children down to grown-ups, because children mirror what they see at home, right? And if they see angry parents who think that it's okay to threaten violence when, you know, somebody disagrees with them, that's what we're going to see more and more in our schools. As well as, you know, it's challenging right now because every time I see a teacher or an administrator give a punishment, I quickly get an email from a parent who says that it's not not fair, that their child is being singled out, that it's discrimination, that they want something else. So, I understand that we all support parental rights, but I think that one of my biggest concerns when we've talked about parental rights is when parental rights start to butt up against each other, who makes those decisions, right? And I think that there are a lot of parents now who aren't taking responsibility for their children and their students' actions, and they either want to defend them or move them somewhere else, or they actually want the administrator or the teacher penalized for, giving discipline to their students. So, I think that's something else we need to address as a district going forward as well, is, supporting our teachers and administrators when they make these decisions to make sure that they're making the right decisions, that they're doing everything they can to support the student, keep them in class, focus on restorative practices, but also support them, because I see a lot of administrators and teachers being demonized right now for trying to avoid violence or to penalize a student or to give them a referral. So I do think that this is a big conversation we need to have holistically, and I appreciate all my board members and the superintendent, all of the work that you're doing. But I think we do have to be realistic about the society and community that we live in too as well. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's 11:58, so we have a couple more board members, and then the superintendent, you'll close up. Member Perez?
Really quick. The data on page 30, it shows the referrals that were put out was for skipping and tardy, and then skipping and tardy only. So can you provide me, later on the referrals that were provided for aggressive behavior or fighting or anything like that? Because I don't see it in the information that you provided. And also, just make sure that when you do that warm handoff for the parents with the referrals, that they understand what those referrals are and how to follow up with those referrals. I really appreciate it, because I think those referrals are really falling through the cracks, and it could assist our students on a higher level if it's done. Thank you.
Member Perez? Thank you, Member Perez. Member Gray, did you have a comment? And then we'll close with Superintendent Davis.
Yeah, I actually wanted Superintendent Davis to speak on a very good point, Member Washington, about the FACE, the Family and Community Engagement. The community piece, I left that out also, but I definitely think that's a huge part of the conversation. So I just wanted to hear from Superintendent Davis.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think it's one of the most important factors. I mean, in education, we cannot do this alone. I mean, these are community issues that are transitioning to our schools. And related to, unfortunately, sometimes we react to the planned initiatives in the community to come to our schools because kids know that if they make a bad decision, there's a lot of adults that can help them stop that bad decision if they engage in it, versus them transition to a community and openly they could potentially lose their lives. So we know that the schools are safe places. When you're looking at analytics, we see that we openly, what we did 3 years ago does not work for today. Our students and families have been through so much. So when we talk about being able to address, we have a number of fillers that we're trying to: youth mental health, youth mental first aid assistance with trauma-informed professional development, Act Now. We looked at Hillsborough Assist, RAC cards. We look at every school has a mental health plan. We put in the climate and culture. So it's not because of a lack of effort. And we see that and I agree. So FACES is truly important, because getting into communities and helping parents help themselves and help children is majorly important to that process. We have kids that will always make undesired behaviors. Doesn't make them bad, just allows them, we have to coach them, help them learn in an effort to be successful. But this is ongoing systems problem that, we watched national news the last 2 years related to behaviors. And teachers are leaving, leaders are leaving in that process because of it. And when we look at our code of conduct, we're trying to do everything we can to have a progression. But the issue is that we have to use OSS as a strategy, because it is a small number of repeat offenders that we have to be able to find the right location for them. When we look at the data today, the biggest issues are skipping and tardies. It's not major issues in our schools. They're always defiance. But when kids, this is why training has to continue. High quality engaged lessons have to continue, where kids are actively engaged. And when they're not actively engaged, they physically and mentally check out, and we've got to do a better job in that process. But this team's working hard. We always have an opportunity to get better, and we will have that continuous improvement mindset.
Thank you, Superintendent Davis, and thank you, team, for everything you do. Thank you. And this meeting is adjourned.
Take a picture of them.